Baruchot habaot, ladies, and welcome to our Ohel Sarah Center, and to the viewers on Torah Anytime. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today we're proceeding with our Shalom Bayit classes with the topic of meddling in-laws and outside interferences. Now, of course, this subject is extremely sensitive, and for some of you it may muck up a lot of old wounds and even present wounds. But I'm of the opinion that when there's a wound, you don't just put a band-aid on it and hope it's just going to heal. First, you have to clean the wound. You have to put on the proper medication on the wound. And then you put a band-aid on the wound, and then you hope that the wound is going to heal. So today, we're going to have to open up some of those wounds so that we could deal with this uncomfortable subject, because there is no other choice. There are times that the truth has to be told so that we could arrive at a place of peace. Sometimes the truth hurts, but the truth is, after all, the reality. Now, if we all try to direct our path towards the truth, then ultimately we'll be able to experience a very happy life. So we're going to begin by saying that many marriage counselors that I've spoken to say that 70% of the problems in the marriage are due to the meddling of in-laws, parents, close family members, or friends. And although the parents and family members are all coming from a good place, and they're not bad people, but sometimes a bare hug could be detrimental. And that's when the couple has to go for counseling, and many of them even get divorced because of the meddling in the marriage. So today we're going to tackle the subject of meddling parents, and it's actually a problem that's written in the Torah HaKdosha. But before we begin to explore this very difficult and sensitive topic, I have to present you with a few introductions as usual. If you remember, in the first classes, we mentioned 5 psukim from Sefer Bereshit that we said accentuates the possible Shalom Bayit dilemmas that a couple experiences, and even the solutions to those dilemmas. So for today's class, we're going to address the last pasuk of those 5 psukim. The pasuk says, Al ken ya'azov ish et aviv ve'et imo, ve'davak be'ishto, ve'hayu levasar echad. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother, and cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. What do we learn from this pasuk? Im ya'azov, if the man leaves his father and mother, the result is going to be vedavak. It'll be easier for him to cleave to his wife. And if he won't leave his father and mother, im lo ya'azov, the outcome is lo davak. He won't cling to his wife. He won't cleave to her. It's so simple. And it's actually written already from the very beginning of Bereshit. It could very well be that the reason why a man and woman aren't cleaving to one another and aren't reaching their ultimate state of happiness and their ultimate state of oneness is because they haven't left their parents. They haven't cut the umbilical cord. So today we're going to understand the meaning of the words Al ken ya'azov. What does it mean? La'azov. What, broges? Cherem? Excommunication? Never speaking to your parents again? What does it mean? Chaz v'shalom. It doesn't mean any of those things. But before we delve into this matter, we're going to take a few minutes to discuss what I call family psychology. So let's analyze the pasuk again. Al ken ya'azov ish et aviv ve'et imo ve'davak be'ishto. Is it the man that's obligated to leave his parents, or does the woman also have to leave her parents? Because the pasuk doesn't mention both the man and the woman. It doesn't say al ken ya'azvu ha'ish ve'ishto. it specifically highlights the ish, the man, but not the woman, not the isha. Why? Why is it that the emphasis is placed on the man? You know why? In order to answer this question, we're going to have to delve into the psychology of man. What's the significance and the depths of the words Al Ken Ya'azov Ish? Chachamim tell us an Ish has a mother. And there's always some kind of tension, some metach that's felt between the mother of the Ish and his wife. Generally speaking, mothers-in-law don't get along with their daughters-in-law. Our Chachamim provide us with a universal rule, with a klal. They say that in general, the mother of the ish doesn't usually like his bride. And the word like, by the way, I'm just using that word, but the Gemara is extremely offensive when it comes to this inyan. You could ask your husband to look it up. A mother-in-law doesn't commonly fagin the daughter-in-law. Let me tell you what's written, because it sums it up for you as a given. It actually says, the Gemara says, that the mother-in-law detests the daughter-in-law, dislikes her in a very strong way. Even if the daughter-in-law is the most passive and easygoing person, even if the mother-in-law is on the ball and with the times, and they both seem to get along, but Chachamim say there's always an underlying current of tension. It only takes one glance from the mother-in-law for the daughter-in-law to feel offended and hurt. Even if it seems that they're getting along, and they say on the other, the mother-in-law says, oh, she's like my daughter. And the daughter-in-law says, she's like a real mother to me. Chachamim say there's always that undertone of tension that exists between the two. Rabbanim explain that it's not a tension that's revealed or very easily detected, but it exists underneath the most beautiful relationship between a mother-in-law and her daughter-in-law. Chachamim's exact words are, Le'olam yesh metach ben chamot lakala. Forever. There will forever be tension between mothers-in-law and their daughters-in-law. To what extent is this tension? Chachamim gave us some red flags to look out for, and they're extreme examples, of course. And also we have to mention that there are definitely exceptions to this rule, and not every mother-in-law out there may behave precisely the way the rabbis depict, but they say the general rule does apply. Our Rabbanim depict how far the tension could go between the mother-in-law and her daughter-in-law. So the Rabbanim and the Gemara tell us a story of a girl who got married, and she was very, very happy. One day, this young woman approached her mother-in-law and she asked, my dear mother-in-law, is it possible for you to recommend a really good perfume so I can make your son happy? And the mother-in-law, she said, of course, I'll recommend something to you, no problem. There's a wonderful perfume called peach oil. Now, I have to interject this story to say that they don't make perfumes today like they did in the olden days. This particular perfume was the best of the best. However, it was extremely flammable. It was made from certain oils that were extremely flammable. Anyway, back to the story. The daughter-in-law asks the mother-in-law, she says, and after I buy this perfume, how do I apply it? So the mother-in-law says, you apply it on your entire body. Oh, okay. The young woman went out, she bought the perfume, and she did exactly what her mother-in-law said. She applied the perfume to her entire body and went to visit her mother-in-law. While she was there, She said, "No, my dear mother-in-law, how's the smell of the perfume that you recommended?" And her mother-in-law smiled and she says, "It smells amazing, really. But my dear daughter-in-law, if you could just do me a favor, can you go to the other room and light a candle there since it's getting very dark?" You could imagine what happened when this poor young daughter-in-law went to light that candle. The Gemara says, actually the Gemara doesn't say, I say, she became the first turbo engine in the entire world. The Chachamim point out, the Gemara says, this is the extent of the tension that exists between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law. Of course, the Rabbanim gave us a very extreme example, but the point is that there are cases out there where there are indeed such extreme situations, to the extent where a mother-in-law can tell her daughter-in-law to go light a candle when she knows she's wearing flammable items. In other words, the Gemara warns that there are times when that tension is going to be hidden, and times like in this case where that tension is very much exposed. Why is it like that? Because in general, the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law don't get along. Yeah, but why? Let's try to find out why Chachamim make it a point to tell us that they don't get along. Doesn't make sense. After all, they're both women. They're both emotional creatures. They have the same mindset. So what's the problem? Chachamim explain that the nature of things is such that a mother is more attached to and or connected to her sons than to her daughters. Why? Because generally, a mother and a daughter are like cat and mouse. There's more conflict between a mother and daughter, but when it comes to the sons, Eze ben yeshli, what a son I have. He's so talented, he's so good looking, he's so refined. And I'm not saying that because he's my son, he's just successful in his own right because that's the way Hashem made him. No malasot. A mother is naturally connected more to her sons than her daughters. Even more than this. When the children get older, a mother generally wants the daughters to get married and leave the house first, even before the sons. Your daughter just turned 18, and already you're rushing her into the dating process so she should get married. But your son, you don't even start looking for shidduch for him until he's 23. Some of you wait until he's even 25. And then there are those who have sons living in their homes who are 40 and still haven't managed to settle down and create their own families. Although a mother wants the good of her son and wants to see him married, deep down, she wouldn't mind if he stayed just another year. But what happens in such a case? Let's see. This mother who raised this cute little boy became our Shimon. Remember Shimon? For 25 years, this mother dedicated herself to raising Shimon. She cooked the best foods for him. She pampered him. She clothed him. She sacrificed herself for him. And now Shimon grows up to be a nice-looking, tall, handsome man. One day, Shimon is walking down the street and he bumps into a young woman named Miriam. Shimon liked Miriam. Next thing you know, they made a l'chaim and they're married. Imagine the scenario now. Shimon comes home to his mother and he says, "Ima, I found a nice kala." She says, "Kala? What's her name?" He says, "Miriam." Now, Shimon's mother wants him to get married, but deep down, she feels like Miriam just took away her beautiful flower. She's thinking, for 25 years I'm raising this beautiful flower, and one fine day, a total stranger comes along and takes him away, if we could somehow draw a cartoon of what's really going on, it would look like this. Shimon is in the center with his arms outstretched. His mother is on one side of his arm pulling towards her side, while Miriam is on the other side pulling the arm in her direction. There's this tug of war when it concerns Shimon. Poor Shimon. He feels obligated to both women in his life. On one hand, he doesn't want to disappoint his mother. But on the other hand, he also wants to get along with his wife. He wants shalom bayit. This is something that the women have to know. Your poor husband is between a rock and a hard place. He finds himself in the middle between you and his mother. And the problem is that you and his mother are not getting along. That kind of tension doesn't manifest itself in a virtual way. It's not only theoretically, but it's actually a halakha in the Shulchan Aruch. And I'm going to explain what I mean. I'm going to prove it to you. As you know, when it concerns tzniut, there are hilchot yichud. That's where a man and a woman who are not married cannot seclude themselves in a locked room. Now, we're not referring to married people, although a married woman wouldn't either be able to seclude herself in a room with another man if he's not her husband. But why is it like this? Because it could be that the seclusion will lead to a sinful act. Chachamim say that if there are two men and one woman, that isn't classified as yichud. But if one woman and one man seclude themselves in a locked room, even if each of them is doing their own thing, and they're not speaking to one another, but if the door is locked and they are secluded, it's still classified as yichud. Why? Chachamim say, Al ta'amin be'atzmecha ad yom motcha. You shouldn't have so much faith in yourself that you're going to defeat the strong impulse of the Yetzer Hara. But why is it that if two men and one woman are secluded, it's not forbidden? Because if chaz v'shalom, something does happen, Chachamim say at least there's one man in the room who could be a witness to what occurred, and he's allowed to be the witness. And because there's an extra person in the room who could bear witness to a possible sin, and engaging in a sin in front of that man would be extremely embarrassing, most people would be careful not to engage in a sinful act when there's another man present in the room who they know could be a valid ed, could be a valid witness. And the Chachamim say that's, of course, if that man has an element of busha, and if the people who are secluded have busha as well. But interestingly, if two women and a man seclude themselves, that is classified as yichud. Why? Because if chaz v'shalom something happens, the other girl in the room is going to downplay the sin. Chachamim say that she'll tell her friend, Miriam, it's okay. It happens sometimes. You're just a human being. Don't be so hard on yourself. Women have a tendency to cover for one another. But here's my question. What if the scenario is a man secluded in a room with a young girl and his mother? Would that be a case where it would be classified as yichud? Would these three be able to seclude themselves in a room? We just said two women and a man is considered yichud. But what happens if it's a man, his mother, and a young girl? Is that allowed? The answer is yes. Why? Chachamim say because if something happens, one of these women will advertise it to the entire world and blame the other one. Why? because this mother is like a mother-in-law, and she's already disliking this girl who's like the daughter-in-law. So she's going to advertise her downfall in the same way that the daughter-in-law doesn't get along with her, and she'll advertise the mother-in-law's sin. So since both of them would feel ashamed at such an outcome, they would be more careful in a secluded room. So there's no isur v'yichud in that case. But what does this teach us? Chachamim are trying to teach us the tension between a mother-in-law and her daughter-in-law, that it's included in one of the halachot of yichud in order to emphasize the conflict between those two. Perhaps now we can understand why the pasuk reads, Al ken ya'azov ish, and it doesn't say Al ken ya'azov isha. Why? Because there's a tension that exists between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law. It goes without saying, by the way, that if a woman clings to her mother and father and refuses to let go of her parents, that too is going to create tremendous friction between her and her husband. But why is the emphasis in the pasuk placed on the man? It's in order to give us a clue concerning the tension that exists between a mother-in-law and her daughter-in-law, that's often hidden at times, and at oftentimes very clear and revealed. However, in contrast to this idea, we find something very interesting. Chachamim say, Hachamot mesampetet et chatana. What does that mean? The mothers-in-law have an affinity to their sons-in-law. Is just the opposite of the previous example. In the other example, the mother-in-law dislikes. In this example, she likes. And we have to note that even love, if it's not a healthy love, can lead to downfalls and trouble. The husbands out there have to know what Chachamim say. Chachamim say, Al tiradem bashmirah. Don't fall asleep during your shift. You have to be alert. If you just married off a daughter, you have to pay close attention to your wife and how she behaves around the new son-in-law. When the new chatan is around, you have to be on guard, says the Gemara. Your eyes have to be wide open. It's not that we, chas v'shalom, suspect the woman of any crime, but because of the affection that she could exhibit towards the new son-in-law, it could chas v'shalom become a problem and even an obstacle in your marriage. Chachamim say that because there's an affinity that a mother-in-law feels towards her son-in-law, even if they don't sin, but there may be an unhealthy and inappropriate closeness that's developed between those two, and we don't want that to happen. You hear this? Let's go back to our pasuk. Al ken ya'azov ish et aviv et imo v'davak be'ishto. Both the man and the woman have to leave their parents' home and cleave to one another. Well, what does it mean to leave? What do the words al ken ya'azov imply? Before we answer that question, I have to say that our parents are wonderful people. They're good people. And if they create problems in our relationship with our spouses, it's not because they're evil people. It's actually coming from a place of love. Because they want to help us so much, they end up destroying rather than helping. Is that bear hug that we mentioned at the beginning of the class. We have to remember that there are no parents out there in the world who married their children off in order to see them getting divorced. No parent wants to see his child getting divorced. Normal parents want the couple to succeed and to be happy. Not only that, but in a normal case, not the exception to the rule, in a normal case, there isn't a person out there who can love you as much as your parents love you. There isn't a person out there in the world who wants your success more than your parents want your success. You should remember that. Parents don't place stumbling blocks in their children's path so that they shouldn't succeed. They're not jealous of our achievements. They want us to be happy. They want us to have a successful life. Again, there are exceptions to this general rule, but we're talking about the average, normal parents, not the yotzei min haklal. The reason why your parents don't know how to deal with your marriage and they can inadvertently create problems for you is because they were never taught how to keep a healthy distance away from your marriage. They were never guided. They never learned these things. They were taught how to communicate with each other. When they went to kala classes, chatan classes, they had a couple of hashkafa classes about themselves vis-a-vis their spouses. Nobody ever gave them a class on how to be in-laws. But today we're going to teach them how to be the appropriate in-laws so that everybody's happy, you and them. So we should keep a mental note of the fact that parents are the people in our lives who truly, truly love us. But there's something else we need to know. Chachamim wrote, En ketubah she'en aleha meriva. That means that there's no marriage out there where both sides didn't have some kind of conflict concerning the marriage of their children. Why is that? Because at some point, say Chachamim, one side or the other will feel that they've been taken for a ride, that they've been offered the raw end of the stick, the raw end of the deal. Now, I don't know if any of you noticed, but before the wedding, Mechutanim speak a lot with each other. After the wedding, they barely speak to each other, they barely see each other, they barely get together, not even for a chag. Only if there's a simcha, the Mechutanim are going to feel obligated to attend out of respect to the other side. But otherwise, when was the last time you got together with your Mechutanim just for the fun of it? Just as a gathering of Mechutanim? That doesn't happen. But let's go back to the question of the words Al Ken Ya'azov. What does that really mean? Tip number 1. A young couple who's getting married should never develop a financial dependency on their parents. This is a no-no. Chachamim don't want the young couple to rely on or to depend on their parents for money. They shouldn't expect money from their parents because whoever expects will only be disappointed in the end. David HaMelech Alav Shalom wrote an amazing pasuk in Sefer Tehillim. He says, Al tiftechu v'ndivim beven adam she'en lo teshua. Do not trust in princes, in the son of man who has no salvation. David HaMelech tells us not to put our trust in man. Why? Because of the next pasuk after that one. He says, Tetzeh rucho yashuv le'admato. His spirit leaves and it returns to his soil. Today a person's alive. Tomorrow he might return to the Borei Olam. David HaMelech wants to know why anybody in the world would rely on a basar vadam who's one day is here, the next day is a goner. He says if you want to rely on anyone, you should rely on and you should have faith only on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A young couple should never expect anything from their parents. A couple has to be financially independent and not be dependent on any of their parents. Now, I know what I'm saying is very difficult to hear. And we all know that when a couple first gets married, it's easier when they have a little bit of financial support from their parents. If the parents give you a little financial assistance, and I mean a little bit, you should kiss their hands. But children should never demand anything of their parents, especially not financial support. It goes without saying that when you involve your parents in your married life, one way or another, it could be damaging to your shalom bayit. So let's see how we make that fatal mistake of involving our parents in our married life. We're going to go back to the example of Shimon and Miriam who got married. Eze yofi, mazal tov. At the l'chaim, everybody enjoyed. They ate, they drank, they danced. After the l'chaim, both sides sat together in order to determine what their responsibilities are going to be for the upcoming chatunah, for the wedding. Now, the following is a tip for all those young people who get engaged. When your parents finished enjoying the simcha of the l'chaim, and they're now sitting down to talk about the financial responsibilities of the wedding, you should never be present at that meeting. You should not involve yourselves in the decisions that each of your parents made at that formal meeting. In order for a man and woman to cleave to one another, you have to apply the idea of Ya'azov in our pasuk. One of the ways that you apply Ya'azov is by not interfering or involving yourselves in the formal arrangements made between both sets of parents. You have to leave the scene and let them work things out like the mature adults that they are. Because if you don't, you're setting yourself up for a very difficult beginning of a married life. You don't have to know about the ins and outs of that formal meeting. Because you're going to end up coming into the marriage with complaints about your partner's parents. Your father promised that he's going to give this amount of money and then he didn't. Your mother agreed to pay for the female photographer and she left the bill for us. Your parents were supposed to take care of the printing and they didn't. I'll give an example of a true story that happened so you understand this point. When Shimon and Miriam decided to get married, their parents came together and the deal was the following. Miriam's father was going to pay for the hall, and Shimon's father was going to pay for the band and the photographer. How much was the photographer's contract? $5,000, which is ludicrous, if you ask me. At the end of the wedding, the photographer started looking for Shimon's father in order to get paid for the job. But Shimon's father is nowhere to be found. Everybody's looking for this man all over the hall, outside the hall. His wife tried calling his cell, but is constantly going to voicemail. Now, in all honesty, does the photographer care where Waldo is? He doesn't care. He only cares about the $5,000 that's due him. So when the photographer understood that Shimon's father did a disappearing act, who did he approach? Miriam's father. Miriam's father, poor guy, didn't want to make a chilul Hashem, so he took out his wallet and he started to pay the photographer. Ladies, every time he took out another bill out of his wallet, he secretly cursed his mechutan. I hope they never find him. If they do, may he never see the light of day. And then he turns to his daughter and he says, no, you see, I knew this marriage was too good to be true. You see what kind of family you married into? Torah, you see? If the father's like this, what could we say about the boy? Is this kala deep down resentful of her chatan and his family? Absolutely. What kind of night do you think that those two young married people are going to have? It's not going to be the most pleasant of first nights, that's for sure. Is the chatan to blame for the fact that his father took off? That has nothing to do with this poor chatan. But the chatan and the kala couldn't stop arguing about what happened for weeks on end. And indeed, that marriage came to an end very quickly because of all that resentment that eventually turned to hatred. Why did this happen? Because neither the chatan nor the kala were able to make a separation between the mistake of the father and their marriage. Al ken ya'azov ish et aviv ve'et imo ve'davak be'ishto. Your new wife, isn't that fault that her father promised things and he didn't keep his word? Your new husband isn't to blame for his father's indiscretions. You know what should have happened in such a scenario? The kala should have turned to her Chatan and said, Shimon, I don't know what happened with your father or why he ran away like that, but the main thing is, the ikar is that I have you for a husband. Zeh ikar. And if it's the reverse, Shimon should have turned to Miriam and said, Miriam, I don't know why your father decided to play David Copperfield and disappeared, but what I do know is that I'm so happy that you're my wife. A couple like this is a healthy couple. This is the couple who received the tools to know how to make distinctions and leave themselves out of their parents' troubles. So let's go back to tip number 1. Our parents don't owe us anything. They're not obligated to pay a monthly stipend, nor are they obligated to buy us an apartment or a car. And Rabbanim say they're not even obligated to pay for our wedding. If they do, you should kiss their hands because it's considered a bonus, it's a matana. But if you start off married life with the attitude that your parents owe you something, you should know that Chachamim say you don't have a true life. Parents don't owe their kids anything. And if you're going into a marriage with that kind of attitude that they don't owe you anything, you're going to be the happiest person. You're going to be the happiest couple. Whoever could release himself from the idea that the parents have to pay for his wedding, or that they have to support, think that the parents have to support your husband's learning, or that they have to allow you to keep the money from the wedding, which is a chutzpah. But whoever could release himself from this mindset will have a healthier and happier relationship with their spouse. There are couples who feel the tension in their marriage because of the financial arrangements that their parents made or lack thereof. Al ken ya'azov ish et aviv et imo v'davak beishto. You have to learn to leave your parents out of the picture of your marriage. If they give or don't give, that's not any of your concern. Nowhere is it written that parents have to pay for their children's wedding. Nowhere. Nowhere is it written that parents are obligated to help their children every month with money. If the parents want to help and they have the means to help, that's a bonus, and you should forever be grateful for that, because they don't have to. Lehefech. Lehefech. If I were you, I'd have rahmanut on them and take all that money from the wedding and give it back to them so they could pay all the wedding bills. Ina ima ve'aba, toda rabba, this is for you. Thank you for all the years that you raised me. Thank you for all the years that you sacrificed on my behalf. Matana mimeni alayich, back. But what happens? The opposite. Today the children expect their parents to pay for the wedding, to keep the money that comes in from the wedding, while their parents are busy paying the bills. What a chutzpah. Tell me, it's not enough that your parents paid for all your wedding expenses from A to Z, including your l'chaim, your vort, your clothes, the furniture, the deposit on your apartment, and all the things that you're going to need for your kitchen, and the gifts that they have to exchange with one another. V'chule, v'chule, v'chule. It's not enough that they're going to shell out several $1,000s more on the food for the wedding, the band, the flowers, the photography, and all the money that they dished out to the shadchan and who knows who else and what else. You also want to keep the money from the wedding night? That's a chutzpah she'en kamoha. Chachamim say it's a chutzpah. You should tell your parents to cash those checks and pay whatever they can in order to alleviate the financial burden. That's the right thing to do. And Chachamim say parents out there should stop offering the money to their children. This is not chinuch tov. In Israel, it's known that the money from the wedding goes to pay for the wedding because the children realize how expensive a wedding is. Not to mention the fact that you have more children that you have to marry off. So I want to ask the young people out there who are dating the following question. Would you be embarrassed to stand in front of Grand Central Station and ask strangers for tzedakah, to hold your hand out? Yes or no? You would, right? And what about when you ask tzedakah from your parents? Are you embarrassed to ask? Chachamim give us an example of this idea. Chachamim say, let's say you're walking down the marketplace and you stumble upon a dead animal, a carcass. The animal is dead, but his fur is still worth something, right? Chachamim say, it's better for a person to find a dead animal on the street, skin his fur, sell it, and make a profit so that he can earn his own living, rather than ask for handouts from people. Even if those people are his parents. You hear this? I'll quote you the Gemara's words. Pshot nevela bashuk ve'al titztarech laberiot. Beriot in this case are your father and mother and your in-laws. You should rather go out to work, says the Gemara, and earn a living than to approach your parents and ask them for money. Now I know this is very hard for some of you out there, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu did say, Al ken ya'azov ish et aviv vet imo. At some point you have to cut the financial umbilical cord and find your own way. Therefore, a young couple has to try and sever the financial dependency that they have on their parents. Why? Because first of all, it's not fair to those poor parents. And secondly, it could create many problems in your shalom bayit. There's a halakha, by the way, that says that until the age of 6, parents have to provide the bare essentials for their children. It seems that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave parents the guidelines and even the limitations of what to provide for the children and until when they should provide it. According to this halakha, if a parent wanted to, he could decide not to financially support the child any longer. But does anybody here know of any normal parents who abandon their financial responsibility when that child turns 6? Chachamim tell us that until the age of 6, our parents are obligated to provide us with the bare necessities. But from the age of 6 until we marry, the parents have to continue to support us, but only from the aspect of din tzedakah. That means that it's considered a charitable act on the part of the parents if they continue to support us. That means that there's no Torah obligation for a parent to support his child financially from the age of 6 and on. But the Rabbanim enforced it. Why? Because it's considered tzedakah, that's all. It's a charitable act on the part of the parents that they have to engage in because we're good Jews. I'll give you an example that the women should pay close attention to. Before you came to the shiur, you took care of your 8-year-old child, your little kid. You prepared him a cheese sandwich. According to what we're saying here, what you did was a charitable act as great as feeding the ani. It's as though you just gave tzedakah to a poor person. Why? Because Chachamim say that after the age of 6, taking care of your children falls under the category of din tzedakah. You're not obligated to support that child. But if you do, it's considered you just did a great chesed with that child. To the fathers out there, I say, if you went out to the market and you bought some vegetables so that your 18-year-old son can make himself a salad, it's as though you just gave him tzedakah. So you just gave tzedakah to the ani. Hear this? You don't have to support that boy. But from the aspect of din tzedakah, you have to be charitable because the Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want you to be like the crows who treat their young without compassion. When the crow lays her eggs and then the eggs hatch, she abandons the little babies. The Torah Kedosha tells us that the babies of the crows, they're miskanim, because the mother abandons them at the most vulnerable time in their life, when these babies, they need tending to, they need to be nurtured and cared for, and that forces the baby crow to fend for himself at a very tender age. The Torah Kedosha doesn't want us to be like the mother crow, who's very cruel. Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be Rahmanim, to be merciful. Hashem wants us to tend to our young. But not only that, if you think we only provide food for our children, let me demonstrate to the children out there how much chesed our parents did with us. How much chesed our parents do. How much they do with you, your parents. From the age of 6, your parents fed you the best foods out there. Foods that provided you with a healthy body. They also bought you snacks and all kinds of drinks. They sent you to camp during the summers, which cost them thousands of dollars. They paid for your summer clothing and for your canteen bills. They gave your counselors tip money and they sent you all kinds of care packages to camp. Not to mention all the expenses of visiting day. Every year that you got taller or wider, whichever one, they provided you with new clothing from head to toe, including clothes for Shabbat and for the Chagim. They brought you all kinds of furniture as you grew up, because you didn't sleep in a crib from infancy until you got married, nachon? Your parents paid your school tuition, trips, extracurricular activities, entertainment money, money for various projects, money for your talents. They bought you notebooks, briefcases, and all your school supplies every single year. And they replenished those supplies. Notice how much money your parents invested in your well-being. Not only that, but when you graduated high school, they paid thousands of dollars for you to go to seminary, or if you're a guy, to go to yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. And when you came back from that expensive year of learning, they paid for your college tuition so that you should have a degree under your belt so that you could support yourself out there in the world. But that's not all. Your parents provided you with a cell phone, they paid the bill. Some parents even purchased cars or leased vehicles for their children. What about the allowance money that they used to put in your pocket as you were growing up, and all that extra cash that you received each time that you asked for it? What about birthday presents? And when you got engaged, they paid for everything that concerned the wedding, plus extras. Not only that, but after you got married, they helped out with a monthly income to ease your financial burden. Your parents spent most of their lives supporting you. And guess what? Not only do you forget to thank them for all their efforts, their hard work and sacrifices, but what do some of you chutzpanim children tell your parents? I feel like you don't like me. I think you have something against me. I'm insecure all these years because of you. You hear this? Where does this world come to? Your parents gave you everything you could possibly want and more. And not only do you not say thank you, but you still have complaints and make your parents feel badly for your lack of self-esteem. Some children have very little hakarat hatov for everything their parents do for them. And worse, they actually think it's coming to them. They don't even take the time to consider how much their parents sacrificed in order to make their life more comfortable. They don't even consider how much their parents supported them. But if you make a calculation, how much your parents spent on the food for one child only from age 6 until the age of 25, you're not going to believe this. You come to about a total of $200,000, and that's only on food. That doesn't include all the extras, like the computers and the phones and the gadgets and the accessories and who knows what else. And if you're one of 8 kids, how much money do you think your parents spent only on food for 8 kids? Your parents didn't let you starve. They took care of you. So tonight, before you go to sleep, you should pick up the phone, call your parents, and thank them for everything they did to support you until now. Don't be ungrateful children. Don't be kfuyei tov. And the same holds true for your in-laws. Call them up and thank them for everything they did to ensure that your spouse was well taken care of all these years. Call your mother-in-law and tell her, Ima, I don't only appreciate you, I admire you so much. I'm your biggest fan for the fact that you took care of my Shimon all these years. Call her, tell her. My fellow friends, we have to kiss our parents' hands for everything they've provided us with, and we have to stop demanding for more. It's not enough they spent all this money on us. We still demand the money for the wedding. We still demand an apartment. We still make them feel as though they have to pay in full for our weddings. It's not enough they saw to it that you arrived to your wedding day in a wholesome and healthy way, but you also want them to help pay your rent after the wedding. You think that's respectable? You think that's fair? You have to make a mental switch, because whoever's dependent on others for financial assistance doesn't know what it means to truly live. So from this day forward, you have to make that mental switch in your mind and think, my parents don't owe me anything. My in-laws don't owe me anything. If you can make that switch in your mind, you're going to see how you become the happiest person, and your marriage is not going to suffer. I promise you, even more than that. You know why it's hard for the children to appreciate what their parents provide for them? And this is a lesson to the parents, by the way, in Chinuch HaYeladim. You know why your children don't appreciate that couch that you bought for them when they got married? I asked this to the young men out there. You know why you don't appreciate the couch your parents bought you? Because you didn't work hard to purchase that couch. There is no greater pleasure than you working hard for something and you, with your own money, reaping the benefits of what you earned with your own hands. So imagine the following scenario. Your in-laws bought you a couch set for the wedding. A nice big couch, a recliner, a set. But since they have 9 other kids that they have to marry off, they bought you imitation leather. Imitation. What do we do? How do you respond? You say, oh, thank you, thank you. But deep down, you walk around mumbling to yourself, imitation leather. Imitation leather, look what they got me. They couldn't spend a few more dollars so we could get the real thing. They're so stingy. Imitation, imitation. Everything's imitation. Why don't you appreciate the couch? You know why? Because you received it as a gift. But if you didn't have a couch to sit on, or worse, if you didn't have a bed to sleep on and nobody was helping you, and you would have to go out and get a job in order to save enough money to buy yourself that same imitation couch, you would love that couch. You'd call your wife over and you'd say, Miriam, how's the couch? Right? Right? It's beautiful. Right? It doesn't feel or look like imitation leather. Look how much money we save. Getting the real thing would have cost us so much more money, and nobody notices the difference anyway. Nachon? What's going on here? How come when it came to the couch your in-laws bought you, you couldn't stop complaining? But when you bought your own couch, pitom, it's okay to have imitation leather, and you valued it. You know why? Because when a person works to earn his possessions, he values them more. But Chachamim say whatever comes easy to you also becomes easy for you to belittle, to criticize, and to discard. And that's a lesson in Chinuch HaYeladim. Parents have to stop feeding their children with everything, because you're creating people that are selfish and don't understand what it means hakarat hatov. They don't understand what it means to earn anything. to value anything because they don't know what it means anymore to work hard to achieve. Chachamim say whatever comes to you with great effort and hard work on your part, you're going to appreciate a lot more. Therefore, as a general rule, you shouldn't depend on your parents or your in-laws for financial support. First and foremost, it helps your parents and your in-laws because they have other children that they have to consider. And secondly, it's going to prevent shalom bayit issues if there are problems that arise in the area of money. Al zeh ya'azov ish et aviv ve'et imo. It's time for you children to relinquish the idea of being financially supported by your parents, and it's time for you to figure out a way to tend to your own mishpacha. You're not going to have your own family. Go out. Get yourself a job. Support your own family. Support your wife. Support your children. It's time for you to stop putting out your hands to your parents as if to say, throw me some money, Ima, Abba. So first tip, Ya'azov ish means stop being financially dependent on your parents and start being financially independent. We're going to stop here and we're going to continue with part 2 of meddling parents and outside interferences the next time we meet. Have a wonderful, wonderful night and tremendous bracha and siyata dishmaya in everything that you do. If you got engaged recently, mazal tov, and remember these tips. If parents are marrying off their children recently, remember these tips. Bezat Hashem, we should only gather in smachot. Amen ken, yehi ratzon.